Welcome back, Hodlers. Today we're going to go over exactly the biggest things that's happened over this week, kind of give a recap because a lot has happened the week. In terms of Chinese FUD, we're talking about the banks and everything else. US dollar, I'll go on a bit of a rant in a little bit, but let's go ahead and get into some news. Okay, so the first piece of news shouldn't be surprising to anyone. China is cracking down on crypto yet again with the Bitcoin mining, but this has actually had a bit of a positive effect on some miners. But we'll talk about the hash rate and everything else, what's kind of happening with this. So China is cracking down on some regions in China that's affecting a lot of the miners. And as we know, a lot of the miners are actually in that country. So this is a big impact on things like the hash rate and everything else. They do say that Bitcoin mining is becoming easier because of this, because there is less competition to mine. And the vice president here of the crypto mining firm Foundry, all Bitcoin miners share in the same economics and the mining in the same network. So mining on both the private and public networks will see an uplift in revenue. So with less miners in the system, you're going to see a higher increase in how it's profitable for a lot of other people. Now, of course, you have things like energy costs that play a big factor into this. And to talk about energy for a moment, there is a lot of news about the energy in terms of being about 56% clean energy, which is what Michael Saylor has been saying. But looking at the indicators, we can clearly see a drop in the actual hash rate for Bitcoin. So obviously there's less miners on the system, and this is due to the Chinese crackdown. And we can see that represented in this chart here on the Finbold article. So this chart did come from Mike McClone on Twitter, and they just noted that we have the drop in hash rate. And he does mention a cautionary tale that selling Bitcoin at a dip below its 50-week moving average, which it's currently at right now, has proven a good way to lose money. Obviously, Bitcoin's going to rebound above the 50-week, and it's a matter of time. Essentially, you just need to hold on. But there are some weak hands out there. It is what it is, but I think people just need to hold on and keep holding their Bitcoin. But this is bullish, at least for miners, so miners are going to increase in revenue. And we can clearly see the total hash rate sinking in this chart here in the last 24 hours. But on a positive note, Bitcoin miners are claiming that we're now more than half Bitcoin is using clean energy. Some are skeptical, as this article states, which I am also in that group, because it's very hard right now to get our entire grid off of fossil fuels, essentially. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be going renewables. I'm saying that renewable energy isn't always the best way. We've talked about how solar energy is pretty bad in terms of the manufacturing of the solar panels, the upkeep of the solar panels, how long they last. Same goes with windmills and everything else. Probably the biggest solution is nuclear and geothermal, most likely water. But we do have the Bitcoin Mining Council that was formed. Just to clarify something on the Bitcoin Mining Council, I know Elon Musk was a part of the initial discussions, but they've made it very clear that Elon Musk isn't actually part of the council. So that's important to note. I know some people might still like Elon Musk, and that's fine if you do. But at this point, I'm glad that he's out of the council and just focusing on making Tesla vehicles, and keep doing that and stay away from Bitcoin. So they've surveyed companies, and they represent 32% of the global hash power behind Bitcoin. 67% of respondents' energy is mixed with sustainable resources, which again, there's that word sustainable, and we do need to be a little bit skeptical of that specific word, because it doesn't always mean that we're looking at renewables in terms of solar or wind or water or geothermal. I think what El Salvador is doing specifically, we've all heard of volcanoes, and if they come out of the volcano mining bonds, however that would work, essentially using the geothermal power from volcanoes to mine Bitcoin, that is a sustainable energy resource as long as that volcano is alive, and really as long as our core is alive. And if that dies, then we have bigger issues. But a lot of the sustainable energy that a lot of the governments want to push aren't exactly sustainable. We're creating solar panels, we're making water for local communities where these panels are made toxic, and same goes for windmills. They're not really lasting more than maybe 10, 15 years at most. So we do got to look at what truly is renewable. I do think that there are a select amount of options here. I do think we need to have more research and development in a lot of renewable technology. But just going at face value, if we do say hypothetically that Bitcoin is 56% renewable, that's very bullish for Bitcoin. Now, they do mention the recent government crackdowns for the Chinese Bitcoin miners, which these miners are heavily on the coal power grid. So this is more the coal power that we've been talking about. And I've talked about this before. How do you make the North America not burn coal to mine Bitcoin, but you have China just doing it as much as they want? You can't regulate what China does. Now, they do also cite a study here that in September 2020, a study was done in Cambridge University that apparently identified that 39% of the energy behind crypto was from renewable resources, which again, I'm a little skeptical on renewable and sustainable, but we'll take that at face value. And, I guess that is a decent increase, and we should see a higher increase over time as we move forward. So as we develop better energy sources, then we're obviously going to have more renewable Bitcoin. Now, even amid the FUD all week, and it's been bad, right? We've talked about all this FUD that's been happening throughout the week and everything else. And even before, when I left for vacation, there was so much just fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Nobody was really sure what was happening. I know a few people sold, but a lot of people bought. But the important thing is to recognize that people are still buying. There's a lot of buying pressure, and especially from the smart money. We see one Bitcoin whale buying approximately 60,000 Bitcoin. And we're not talking about $60,000 worth of Bitcoin. We're talking about 60,000 Bitcoin, BTC, which is an incredibly large number. So you can see that obviously they are buying, people are buying, and these whales are buying, and there's a reason for that. So follow the smart money, and we can see that spike represented here. It was tweeted out by Willy Woo. So looking at that spike from Glassnode, it clearly shows that one big whale. And this is one thing to highlight too, is that the market is so small that one single whale can dramatically move the market just like this. So there is a lot of market manipulation that's happening, especially with what we saw with the Wyckoff model before we went down. But moral of the story, people are still buying, and it's important to still buy Bitcoin and hold on to it. And take a page from Mike McClone's book and not sell below the 50-week moving average. Because as you know, we did hit our death cross, but that doesn't mean that we're sparking into any sort of bear market. It just means that we're going to be trading down here for just a little bit until finally we can work our way back up. So I don't think we have too much to worry about. Of course, Bitcoin can drop below 30K, but right now I don't think it's going to happen. Now, outside of crypto, and this is important to put in the bigger picture, because I think we're coming to a very big crescendo in terms of what's happening with traditional finance and crypto and cryptocurrency. The US government has hit a deficit of $3 trillion. Obviously, a lot of this is due to the coronavirus, and you can expect that. Sure, there's more spending. They have the big infrastructure bill from Biden. So there's a lot of big things coming from the United States that's costing a lot of money. But this has been indicative of how the United States has operated for a while. Maybe the deficit hasn't been this large, but it has been large over the past couple of presidents before, and it's just continuing the trend. I've said it before that I think the USD and the US dollar is really heading for a dramatic death march at this point. I don't think that there's a way out of it. The Federal Reserve is not reporting M2 reports, so we actually have no idea how much money is being printed, how much inflation is happening, and I think we're not going to know until it's frankly too late. And that's why having things like cryptocurrency and gold and other hard assets is going to be important. Now, I wouldn't even trust equities in a way. Some equities, yes, but a lot of equities, I'd probably more focus on the tokenized equity. FTX has some tokenized equities, and I know Binance as well has some tokenized equities. But I don't know how reliable paper equities would be. And the reason why I say this is because of the silver squeeze. Obviously, there's more silver sold than actually silver in vaults, and that's a big deal. That's a big issue that we can't have. We can't be selling more than actually exists. And that's basically what got us into this problem in the first place. So one big thing to note here too as well is that interest rate payments on this massive of a debt, $3 trillion deficit is going to be huge, but it should go down because rates are expected to go close to zero. Now I do think, and maybe this is just me making a prediction and speculating, but I do think at some point within the next 5 years, we are going to see negative interest rate. I truly believe that that's where we're going. And I don't think that that is a good scenario for any economy at all. But I think it's an inevitable feature that the Federal Reserve is going to have to turn to because they have no other option. But on that same token, 650 banks are going to be able to offer Bitcoin purchases in the near future. So this is ideally going to happen, have it more readily available. And I know for a lot of people that ask me, how do I buy Bitcoin? Can I go to my bank? Can I just buy Bitcoin? Well, now they will be able to eventually, and this is eventually where we're heading to. You're going to be able to buy it just like you could buy gold from a bank. A lot of firms are believing that this is exactly where we're going in terms of offering crypto and crypto services. And one big thing to note about the banks and financial advisors and everything else, I hear all the time from some financial advisors that I know from work, essentially just saying that they're always asked about Bitcoin, but the company's not letting them actually put it in people's portfolios, which is a big issue right now. But people are starting starting to ask more about Bitcoin, even the people that aren't really technologically advanced to know enough about Bitcoin. But they are asking questions at least and wondering, hey, is this thing that I heard about back in 2017, is this still a scam or is this the real deal? One big thing to note in anything in life, if something's been around for 10 years plus, it's likely that it's probably going to stay around for a while. And I think cryptocurrency is obviously a new technology to be adopted. It's still early. We're still in the early phases. If you guys remember back in the days of the internet, I look at today as like the Ask Jeeves type day before Google has been born. So I still think that there's a lot to happen. We're still in dial-up. We're still hearing the beep. But eventually people are just going to be using cryptocurrency on their phone like they use their debit cards. Now, I wanted to end it on this article here. We don't have much time left to regulate cryptocurrency. This is from the Bank of France governor. Now, the reason why I bring this up is more not so for France or anything else, but it's more for a cautionary tale of everyone. If you look at what happened in New York came down with some heavy regulations against Bitcoin. They had the bit license and everything else. The person who actually formulated those regulations went off to work for consulting firms and make a ton of money basically showing people how to navigate through his loopholes. Having regulations in certain areas of the world are going to be detrimental to those areas. Money is going to flow where it easily goes. And the reason why I say this is because I specifically live in Ontario. We have a lot of new laws coming out with C36 and a lot of issues that are happening with cryptocurrency. We do see that the OSC, the Ontario Securities Commission, has made some legislative changes and suggestions, and this has opted a couple of exchanges to opt out. The biggest exchange, obviously, is Binance. Now, Binance is one of my big exchanges that I use. I don't hold much on Binance, but I do buy a lot on Binance. I usually buy on Binance and then move it to my other wallets. It's basically my central hub of everything. The reason why I bring this up, even though I know a lot of people that watch me are from Ontario, but the actual reason why I bring this up is more to talk about the world in general. When you're putting regulations on something, especially in new technology like cryptocurrency, you are only hurting yourself and your people. And I think until premiers, prime ministers, presidents, whoever, until these legislators actually realize that they're harming their population, we're not going to see much change. We're just going to see this big wishy-washy loophole of crap legislation that's basically going to go by and do much more damage than good to the overall economics of those areas. So while other areas might prosper and thrive to the new technology, other areas are simply going to be left behind. I've said this numerous times about the United States. If the United States doesn't get their act together, they're going to be left behind by crypto. I'm now feeling that struggle myself here in Ontario. So I think unless the Ontario government really makes a change, we are going to be left behind just like the United States was. And I think one big catalyst here is definitely El Salvador making Bitcoin legal tender, being one of the first countries to ever do so. I think that is going to spark a huge initiative on a lot of other maybe less fortunate, less economically fortunate countries to adopt certain cryptocurrencies as legal tender. And I think as more countries adopt the blockchain, it's going to make it harder and harder for bigger countries like France, Canada, and the United States to really ignore that, hey, we need proper legislation that allows for a good, healthy, free market, which is exactly what we all want. At the end of the day, most of us here are probably capitalists, and the biggest thing that we want is just a free market. Free of manipulation, free of government control, and obviously with entities like the OSC or the SEC, it's really hard to do that unless these organizations are regulated properly. But that's it for this week in crypto. Obviously, Bitcoin is currently sitting at 35,675, so we're not in any sort of straits in any way. Bitcoin is doing fairly well, still trading within our level that we've been discussing, so I'm not overly worried going over to the 4-hour chart. So again, as long as Bitcoin is just trading in this level, it is what it is. We're just going to trade sideways, have a very boring summer, and whatever you accumulate now is going to pay dividends by the time the bull market re-engages. We're obviously not dropping at this point, and if we do drop, it's probably going to be roughly just a few K. And again, this is the aftermath here from the death cross that we all anticipated over the last couple of weeks ago. So obviously it hasn't had as big of an impact as we thought it might. It did drop and retest below our 30,000, but obviously it hasn't done any long-term damage to the crypto space. But that's it for me. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe if you did like this video, and obviously happy hodling.